Now, the family of Shamima Begum, the British teenager who joined the Islamic State group in Syria, say she should be allowed to come home to Britain. In a statement tonight, they said they'd lost hope of ever seeing her again, and as a British citizen, she has every expectation to be returned to the UK. But the Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, has suggested he may prevent those who've joined IS from ever coming home on national security grounds. Our Home Affairs correspondent, Daniel Sanford, has the latest.
Inside the Al-Hawl camp in northern Syria, the women and children fleeing the fighting in one of the last strongholds of the Islamic State group. This is where the former Bethnal Green schoolgirl Shamima Begum is. Her family had lost all hope of seeing her again, and tonight in a statement they asked the British government to help them to return her along with her unborn baby. As a British citizen, they said, Shamima has every expectation to be returned to the UK and be dealt with under the British justice system. Shamima's child, who will also be British, has every right as a total innocent to have the chance to grow up in the peace and security of this home. They said they would welcome the police investigating her, something that is inevitable if she returns.
We have to be clear that people who leave this country to support that regime are people who, if they do return, have to answer for their actions.
Some 850 people left the UK to join IS, and around half have already come back. Today, Alex Younger, the head of the Secret Intelligence Service MI6, warned that at least some returnees will pose a risk. Experience tells us that once someone has put themselves in that sort of position, they are likely to have acquired the skills and connections that make them potentially very dangerous. The Home Secretary said this morning that he would prevent people involved in terrorist organisations returning to Britain. But what does that mean for Shamima Begum, who left the UK as a schoolgirl? Could she have her citizenship taken away?
If she doesn't have another nationality, as I believe to be the case, then it is morally unacceptable to refuse her entry, as well as legally unacceptable, because otherwise she would be stateless, and no person in the world can be stateless under the law.
Her family said they were shocked to hear her say she didn't regret going to IS. They explain it by suggesting she was groomed at the age of 15 and might have been wary of what she was saying in a camp surrounded by IS sympathisers. And Rashad Ali, who is an expert in de-radicalisation, says IS supporters can be turned round.
We know in the UK we have worked over the last 10 years with fairly hard-line violent extremists who have renounced their ideology, have remorse for their actions, and have taken part actually in helping others move away from extremist tendencies and violent ideologies.
The Kurdish Red Crescent says there are around 1,000 new arrivals at Al-Hawl just this morning. Decisions will have to be made soon about what to do with the British IS supporters among them. Daniel Sanford, BBC News.
OK, well, if Donald Trump's reference to what he called a big announcement about Syria has led many to believe he'll soon declare the final defeat of Islamic State, this has brought the fate of IS's foreign fighters and indeed followers into even sharper focus, particularly what now happens to the pregnant IS bride from East London, Shamima Begum. In a statement to us tonight, her family pleaded with the government to help bring her home, claiming the baby is an innocent who has every right to grow up in Britain. At a security conference in Germany, the head of MI6 warned that returning fighters and sympathisers may indeed represent a security risk. But he said if they are British, they do have the right to come back here.
The Bethnal Green girl who became an ISIS woman and whose future is now unknown. Shamima Begum's family spoke to ITV News tonight. They told us they had lost all hope of ever seeing her again. For the first time, they responded to her claim that she had no regrets. We were utterly shocked by what we heard Shamima say, but to us, those are the words of a girl who was groomed at the age of 15. We're also mindful that Shamima is currently in a camp surrounded by ISIS sympathisers. The welfare of Shamima's unborn baby is of paramount concern to our family, and we'll do everything within our power to protect that baby, who's entirely blameless in these events. Then they addressed the issue of whether the girl who skipped school for Syria should be allowed home, saying, As a British citizen, Shamima has every expectation to be returned to the UK and be dealt with under the British justice system. We welcome an investigation into what she did while she was there under the principles of British justice and would request the government assist us in returning Shamima and her child to the UK as a matter of urgency. This is a war that's well into its 11th hour. Territorial defeat seems imminent, and Kurdish forces want their foreign detainees no longer. They say the British government has a moral responsibility to take back Shamima Begum.
They can't expect us to come back to the UK and be welcomed with open arms, however vulnerable they might look. The fact is, they have done something that is completely wrong.
In the meeting rooms of a Munich hotel, world leaders and intelligence officials are discussing this issue. On the left of this image is the man known as C, the chief of MI6, meeting his counterparts from France and Germany. In rare public comments, he said, "All experience tells us that once someone has been put in that sort of position or put themselves in that sort of position, they're likely to have acquired the skills or connections that make them potentially very dangerous." But, he added, British nationals have a right to come to the UK. It looks like the exodus to ISIS all over again, but in reverse and at speed, adding a humanitarian crisis to a diplomatic one.
From all of our experience in Iraq as well as in Syria, that the defeat of the caliphate as a territorial entity doesn't mean the end of the sectarianism, of the politics that drives people to these extreme views. And so it's now absolutely vital that the pressing humanitarian needs are met in full, but also that the political structures develop.
The story of Shamima Begum is just one among many hundreds. It is the end of the caliphate, but not of its consequences. Rohit Khatru, News at 10, Munich.